also going to introduce this piece. When I was a young lad in Superior, Wisconsin, my Uncle Ted, married to my Aunt Winifred, always told me that I'm Norwegian, he said, and you should learn some Norwegian pieces. So he gave me a book with Norwegian pieces in it. And these two pieces, which I merged together, are from my Uncle Ted's book he gave me. His last name was Heisler, not very Norwegian. I suppose that every young pianist will learn. Oh, I'm off.
Are we on Oriental?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
This is not as well known. Right, but it's a fun one from French composer César Cui.
Sorry.
I'll just preface this because I interrupted the story, the history on this. But if you notice on the program, many of the pieces were arranged by my dad. And so he will downplay all of this, but I'm going to upplay it. Because I think this is a very, very clever arrangement. And if I may be so bold as to say, maybe, I think Beethoven would approve. Yeah.
Maybe he's rolling over next grade.
See what I mean? See what I mean? I think this is such a clever pairing of these pieces, and it's one of my ultimate favorites on the program. So. dance part. Are you ready to get up out of your seats? Coming up.
This is called cello, which means for cello and piano. And I had this thing about the old German dance halls back in the 20s. I forget, what did they call those places? Anyway.
Dance halls. Dance halls.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very profound. Okay. Anyway.
out a break here and move into a jazz piece that I first heard when I was in college, many years ago. In the mid-'80s, there's a group called the Turtle Island String Quartet. And they really were a breakthrough group in bringing more orchestral strings into the jazz world. And they continue to this day with a rotating membership. They're a very active group. The cellist is the only member up until, I forget, a few years ago, he retired. He had been in the Winnipeg Symphony, and he said, I want to do something a little different, and started doing some jazz cello playing. And he's really had an impact on cellists, too, in his playing and performing. Mark Summer, and this piece was composed in 1988, and it's become a favorite of cellists to perform. Little jazz piece, and it has some kind of some guitar techniques where you have a hammer on, you're pulling the string and pull-offs with the left hand, some pizzicato, some slapping sounds, so hopefully it's not too jarring and it's fun. Julio, or as my dad says, it now has to be because we're moving to Ecuador, Julio. enter Carol Killian again on accordion. And maybe a few of you have come in as we've been playing, which is great. We're glad to have you here. It's been a little bit of a rough road to get here for everybody, so appreciate all of you being here and coming through some challenging circumstances to make this all happen. So I announced earlier, if you didn't hear, we were going to have, and maybe you saw in the advertisement that Susie and Honda were going to be dancing with us today, but they're on the side of the lake that got hit the hardest, and they're still working their way out of that. So they send their apologies and their best wishes for us here, and so they're taking a little rest here from all the work that they have there. But we'll hope to catch them another time. So we will do, the next two pieces are waltz pieces. So actually, if any of you feel like dancing or moving around a little bit more than you already have been, please feel free to get up, move, or just move where you are. However, so Somewhere My Love and Westphalia Waltz.